Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 147 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we are going to design the setups that will make the crystals. Enjoy! Might as well design each individually, and then connect them all together when we're good. Because we do have a general idea for how we want things to be set up. So we have 20 making dishes. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Then an input of this and cellulose paste to make the Petri dishes with growth mediums. And the belt can come in either through this side or this side and combine with this belt here. But it will go down there. 33.4. Let's do like 2 rows. It's either going to combine here or here. And it'll be red. I'll just put the splitter there. They go that way and that way. And we got to convert this to the Petri dish. And then this goes through 8 machines. And it's going to have either something coming in from the left or from the right. But let's assume the other side, because that's the way the other one is. Make them all the same, then flip them if we need to. Then we have our output. But we kind of need to reverse this and change that to inoculated Petri dish. And then finally, we gotta mix it with the crystal dust. It can come from either side again. But it goes down. And how many do we need? 40. So something very similar to the other side. That was like that. In fact, it's identical. Because I made it a little bigger. So it fits just fine. And change the recipe to the crystal seed. And finally, that's the output we need. So it's a really long and narrow setup, but we'll have lots of space, so that's okay. But that takes care of the seeds. And then they can move on a belt for wherever makes sense for this giant crystallizer setup. But we also are going to need some grindstones. The powder's already coming in, so the first step are all of these chemical furnaces, and can we make any better ones to make that setup a little smaller? Oh man. It's locked behind blue science. So I guess not. We gotta make it that big. Hopefully we're manufacturing chemical furnaces. I think we are. Yes. Not very many of them though. 131. Something like that. Well, that's going to be a while. Let's try to do the setup in reverse then. While we're waiting on those. So we need 40.1, which is so close to 40. I really want to use that number because that is exactly the same setup as this, essentially. So we gotta switch it to making the crystal grindstones. Let's connect these. So no more flashing. Now this will need probably something on the end as an emergency to provide some amount of crystal powder if the setup can't produce it in a big enough quantity. So I'm gonna put like a couple of chests right there to hopefully remind me that that setup needs to be built there. In fact, what machine is this powder made in? An ore powderizer. Let me just put an ore powderizer there to remind myself that we need to make something. It doesn't have to be huge, but it does need to be something. We'll calculate that later. So then we need 20 machines. Could almost do direct insertion there, but it's probably not a big enough setup to be worth it. It's not like we're making paper or something. So let's copy the setup that is 20 units long. we need to reverse the belts. And switch over to make the grinding wheels. However, they require a significant amount of silicon carbide. 2 red belts worth, actually. It still can be yellow inserters, but it's enough that we need to have 2 belts. So let's put it on the outside. And let's see, that steel can come from the other side. Or whatever side is appropriate. Now we gotta make the silicon carbide. Are those machines ready yet? They're getting there. Well, I'll pull 30 of them, see what we can build, and then go from there. So 131. Well, let's see what this looks like. It'll have 2 inputs and an output. So it can be like 2 inputs and an output. Then there'll be 1 on each side. And you can put this output on this side as well. And lots of yellow inserters. So we can take that and like tile it like this. And actually knowing that, let's take this somewhere else where we have more room. And then later on we'll slap it in here. I hope this is enough room, but let's use this area. Actually, it might not be. There's going to be quite a few of these. Let's do something like this. Okay, so if we had 8 of them in a line, we need 131. So we need 17 rows. What's that look like? Yeah, just about. That's actually not that bad. We've got too many power poles on this side. And we got to get the inputs in here. I guess on the other setups we're having the belts come in through the ear, so we should probably do something similar if possible. I think that would do it. Then we have to combine the outputs of that into 2 red belts to go in here. Let's see, we can do red belt. Something like that to get our outputs. The machine's done yet. Getting there. Well, if we're just waiting on steel pipe, I can help. And there we go. Don't have to worry about hooking that up to this part right here. That's that line. And let's see, maybe on the side, calculate what we want this powderizer to be. We need 15 crystal powder. And let's just calculate that on the side. And we want 15. Oh, well, that's no problem at all. A single powderizer will do it. Then I guess I could just leave that there. Okay. Seeds are done. Grindstones are done. And with that, we're finally at the point of making shards. Everything goes in the crystallizer. 80 of them. And after that, 40 go into that machine, and then we can probably split off into 3 lines. And then maybe another line after it, making splinters. And then another line after that, grinding up any extras. And then after that, turning it into the crystal slurry, if available, if we need it. Okay, crystallizers. Do we have those on the bus? Remember I handcrafted a bunch of them. I don't know what that means as far as having them on the bus here. Ah yes, here we go. So we need 80. That might take a little while. So let's go straight into the assembling machine part of this, since we tend to have lots of assembling machines. And where to make this? Let's go out there. Okay, this one's going to work a little bit differently, because we have one input, but 2 red belts of output. So if we do the output on the outside, I think a yellow inserter will work for this, but with all these individual items, it might not. We will have to see. Since it's picking up 4 unique items, it might have trouble inserting for all of those. But we'll have 1 belt of input. But we can put 1 on the outside. Let's put 2 inserters on the bottom to hopefully max out the belt. And that should still be our 40. Yep. So the output will come out, and it's going to be a mixed output of these 4 different things. And we can throw all that in a warehouse. This is essentially the sorting warehouse, which will give us 4 yellow belts of each of the individual things we need. One of them's going to go out to the side. It's going to be powder. And these other ones are going to be the 3 colors of crystals. One of them can go to the left. That'll be blue. Then one will go down, which will be red. And another one can go to the right. But let's put the powder on the bottom so this can be symmetrical. And we'll make that one the green. And then they go out as needed. So it requires 4 machines for the powderizers. Interesting. Kind of want to have 2 things going on here out of each. First, we fill up the next warehouse. This time it's only going to have, say, red crystals. Then it'll have 2 outputs. One of them always goes. And then the other one is what happens if this is full. And we can decide on whatever we want full to be. Let's just say 1,000. So it's on. If the warehouse is full, it has over 1,000 in it. Then when it does, it can be thrown to the side. Let's just make these over here. And this will be grinding up the red splinters. And that'll take care of those. Then we need to have 12 machines. So we can do something like this. Making milling drums. Then the input belt can come in through there and probably swing around the long way. And then we can have the buffer in there. It seems pretty good. We just need to space that in a way that gives us room for it all. Like that. And then this will create an output of dust, which can come back up here and join the dust line. There'll already be another one coming from up there somewhere, which can go down there. Let's see, actually we can kind of put that there, because when that joins, there'll be 2 of them. Okay, so each color will get that to get rid of the excess. But now the normal thing we need to do is 40 machines polishing them. I'll just take this for now. We'll see if it works. Probably need to change something about it because it's got fluids. Can join the fluids in the middle. Let's see, let's space this, because we're going to have our inputs coming down there. And our output will be there too. Let's see, because we have multiple outputs on this though, we will need to have some filter inserters. set to only the splinters. And we kind of need something similar for the other side, for the used milling drums. So there's half of it. We would need 2 of them. So we have a milling drum output going this direction, which needs to get processed. And an input going this way. Okay, these don't need milling drums. They need the grinding wheels. Then the grinding wheels come from this setup. So it'll just be an output going to whatever warehouse controls that. Then an input coming back in. Then we need a series of splitters. So actually, or since these are all a unified setup, they all will go to the same grind wheel repository in both directions. Okay, it's going to be kind of painful to move this just a few squares over. But you got to get it lined up. Probably space it down a little bit, just to make it look a little nicer. And I kind of placed it too far over on this side, so we won't really be able to see what the full thing looks like, but we can build to the right and kind of see what it looks like. So we'll want to copy this up to about here and move it out somewhere that makes sense. Well, this is the maximum distance of the undergrounds, and it's nice and spaced out if it needs to be. So let's do that. See if we can keep these undergrounds going. And we can connect all this stuff together, because it's all interconnected. So this is the output for the green splinters. So they can go in here. We'll also probably want to have some logic on these, because right now, if any one of them gets above 1,000, it'll eject the extra, but what happens if all 3 are above 1,000? So let's send the signal over here. And have 3 combinators reading the inputs of each warehouse. You know, let's say if it's over 10,000, output a red square. So this one can be red, and this one can be green. Then we'll actually set this to if it's over 10,000, just to give it some amount of flex. Then we can have an output. Let's just put it on the green wire. And it can go to each of these. And they can be enabled if there are less than 3 red squares. Although that's kind of inverted. Let's say if each one is less than 1,000, output the green square. Because sending start signals is probably better than sending stop signals. So this requires some sort of green signal. So green signal above 0, it runs. So if no type of crystal is needed, in other words, each one is above 1,000, it stops. And if any individual storehouse gets above 10,000, it'll consider that excessive and start grinding them away. So we got to get these adjusted for each color. This would be the green one. And so too is this green. And it has the red belts coming out here, getting combined. And that'll be the dust output to go wherever it needs to go. So this setup is basically ready. Just consider that there would be a third one of these on the left side there. So, to make sure that we have the correct number of resources calculated, I am just going to grab it and then plop it over here. But I won't have it connected. It's just there so we can calculate the total number of resources. But we still can get all this set properly. This is set for blue. That's basically the output. It's off-center a little bit, but you get the idea. And we need the ability to make the harmonic splinters in case we need them, and they do go into a few things. So we need a set of 40 machines, but nothing too crazy on this one. So let's just grab another set of 40 here. And actually, let's get rid of half of it. And the output will be on the sides. And pretty good, we can just kind of place it wherever here. And down a little bit. Because we're going to need to do some belt stuff to get that to fit in there. Each output of here is going to have to, you know, come down and get stitched in as appropriate. But don't really know exactly where we want that to be right now. So I'm not going to worry about that because it would completely change the design if they went to the left instead of the right here. It's not that easy of a thing to switch around because we need to get all three types of splinters coming in here. So probably didn't need to move this, but oh well. That takes care of most of that. We just still need the crystallizers. And I think that's it for all the major machines. Looks like the crystallizers are done. Let's see, so we need 80 crystallizers, so how about we'll put 10 in a row here. Where we'll have one input and one output. So we need 3 more sets. 1, 2, and 3. And the output can get combined into one yellow belt. And this input will have to come from somewhere. But we can worry about that later. Same with the fluids. I think those are all the setups. Now we need to think about the logic about where we're going to place them and how we're going to get the resources there. We've got a series of train stations here. Can easily put more going up or down. And we've got some empty space here, some stereotype, but that's fairly small compared to this setup. So we still got quite a square in here to use. And this makes good sense for train stations, because then the resources can go out, go into the builds, and then go back in. So we need to think about all the resources we need to move around. Now we've got quite a bit on drones already. Although it did occur to me, we do still need to handle this crystal slurry real quick. So let's do that. Let's see, is it calculated? No. Let's just calculate it off to here. First, we need to be able to make it from the powder. And we know at maximum, assuming we're grinding pretty much every color, which will never happen, we'd only ever really be grinding 2 at a time instead of 3. So we'd have 30 plus an additional 15. So we'd have 45. So we would need to have 30 liquefiers and probably like 1 water purifier, pretty much. But that only gets us 45, but that isn't even necessarily half of the crystal slurry we'll need, because it's also possible that we'll be grinding no crystals. Although this powder is going into the grindstones, we do need to have a backup. Yeah, and there's our backup right there for making the powder necessary. I think we figured out we only needed the 1. So under normal circumstances, all of that's going there. So actually, the most at one time we'd be able to produce is an input of 30 crystal powder. And this is the less efficient way, so that's why I'm limiting this. So it would be 20 liquefiers, producing 30 a second. If we're making all 3 crystal types without grinding any of them, then it means we have no powder whatsoever. We'll just need to make all of the slurry, all 90 of it, the old-fashioned way. which is from crystal dust and sulfuric acid. And funnily enough, it only requires 1.8 machines to do that compared to the 20 it takes to do this one. So this is much smaller. That's good. Well, that's almost small enough where you don't have to worry about it. 22 liquefiers and a water treatment plant. That's all we need to worry about bringing along with us. Then we can just build it where it needs to be built. So as long as we bring those along, we're good. So one thing we need to take care of and make sure we don't forget anything is how many trains need to come in and exactly what logistics system they're going to use. So I'll make a list here. Well, we have glass, which is on LTN, crystal dust, which is not. Things like the bacteria, the cellulose paste is on drones, so we don't have to worry about that. Then steel is on LTN, carbon is on LTN, and silicon powder is on LTN. And then we'll need to make crystal slurry, which we're going to need sulfuric acid, and that is not on LTN. Also, we'll be needing to do these milling drums, which requires lubricant. Hey, the nutrient pulp train actually left. It filled up and went down there. Same with the saline water train. But we'll need lubricant, and I think that might be most of the inputs. And then it'll be time for the outputs, which is going to be these 4 crystal splinters. But the question is, what kind of logistic system do we want to do? Because these things are not easy to make, because you can see our total output is 15 per second. But then again, we have entire production chains. I was looking for silver, and it doesn't seem to be up here, because silver is the one that's we're not making much of. But things like glass, which we're making 22.5, and that gets its own train. So it would be kind of interesting if a quantity of 15 per second did not get its own train. It'd just take a long time for those trains to fill up, but I mean, eventually they would. But it's probably not necessary to do LTN, because the only thing that these crystals go into is basically their appropriate circuit board or the harmonic splinter. And right now we have 60 stacked train cars. So 60 times 200 for the stack is 12,000, and if we're making 15 per second, it takes 800 seconds, which is 13 minutes to fill one train car. So I don't think we need to have a train with 4 cars of these in it. And since we're mostly doing 4-car trains right now, why not just have a 4-car train holding 1 car of each resource, and then whenever one resource is empty, it'll just go back to the depot, load up, and then go back. So we'd be looking at about 13 minutes at worst per trip. That seems pretty good. So I'll write that down as well. We have an output of all 4. Okay, so as far as our list, we need an LTN train station with glass, steel, carbon, and silicon powder, which is easily within the capacity of what we can do. And then 3 non-LTN train stations of crystal dust, and then sulfuric acid and lubricant, and then an output station with all 4. Now we could make the train parks at the depot type of LTN stations where there's like, 2 of them right next to each other, but that's not really an ideal way of using LTN, so I kind of want to avoid doing that. And hey, that train has 55 stacks in it. It's almost actually full. So for now, we can just use the 1 train, and then if LTN becomes something we want to do, well, that's easy enough to convert this to LTN, and then we can just merge, like the crystal dust, for example, onto the station that's doing glass, steel, and everything else, because it's going to only have 4 items, where the standard LTN station that I designed can do 8. So we'd still have 4 slots left for requests. Okay, so we need 1 more of these. Then we gotta get lubricant up there. Easy way is probably along the side here with nutrient pulp. And boom. Let's pipe all that lubricant in. Seems pretty good. I think we've got most of everything. We'll see what we can accomplish up there. We do need to kind of go up there anyway, because we got to bring the crawler back down. Or I guess just hand deconstruct everything. But this is kind of what the crawler's for. And it sucks to drive it down here, but it'll be easier in the long run to do that. How are we doing on lubricant? Hey, we're getting pretty full. So it'll probably look fairly clean to just copy a few more up here. I'll call this one sulfuric acid unload, and this one will be lubricant unload. So let's take care of some of these trains here. Let's see, this is the sulfuric acid train. Sulfuric acid load, full cargo, unload, empty cargo. And that's gonna come on the way. And we got the other one, which is lubricant, full cargo, lubricant unload, empty cargo. And that one's about to be on its way. It's kind of a long path for the train to take, but I kind of want to see how quickly it gets back. It probably won't really take that long. Certainly unloads quickly. It's like mesmerizingly fast. Like, look how long it takes to slow down. Like, it really breaks in advance. And fill up again. And back we go. This is a much higher throughput than any pipe could hope to output. Because this whole train is moving 150k of fluid, and it takes, what, about a minute or so for a round trip? Let's do the LTN station, which will take up significantly more space. Why am I doing this with nanobots? We've got the crawler do all the hard labor. I believe we also needed to make an energy shield for the crawler. Not that it's particularly sensitive to it, but we might as well give it the upgrade. You just plop it right there in the front. Okay. This is more or less installed. We just got to get it set up here. We'll call it Aquarium Load 1. Actually, it's an unload. Aquarium Unload 1. The one kind of showing that this is just an LTN stop. And that the fact it's not, doesn't have a specific resource in the title. Then we got to get all the resources configured. So LTN combinator. Hurry up and turn it off. And then it's negative 256 stacks of everything we need to send over, which is glass, steel, carbon, and silicon powder. The networks this is going to be on, so I believe the plates and the carbon. Now we need to get these sent to the right storehouse here. So glass, glass, steel, steel, carbon, carbon, and silicon powder. And then the rest of these need to be set up as blank, and I think we use the strong box as a random blanker. Okay, so that should be it. When we turn this LTN station on, it should make the relevant requests. Let's make sure it does. Looking good. So there go all the trains. Going to glass. Going to silicon powder. Going to steel. So that's looking good. And I think the bus is doing pretty well. We're almost maxed out on silver, but we've got a collection of silicon now, at least 11k. And it looks like by not making any concrete, we're making our silicon go a lot longer. So as long as we don't make concrete, we'll probably be fine. And the rest of the resources are just doing their thing. So it looks good. No red lights. So working as intended. Well, let's make another station. Because of the curve, it makes it kind of difficult to put it down here. Because of that, it might make more sense to put it up here, even though this is where the fluids are. And the dust might have longer to travel, but because of this curve, it makes more sense for LTN stations to go here. But I don't know, it might not really matter because we have 2 more stations to build, not the 1, so I guess we'll just build it here. It ought to be okay. We don't have to completely smash them in there. Here comes the first train. Glass, I guess it makes sense because I only stack in units of 100. Looks good. Let's see, I kind of want to copy some of this so you can make it look consistent. And then the unloading station. Get it lined up with this guy. And probably switch sides. How are we doing with those lubricant barrels? Getting close. About 3,000 and we'll finally have gone through it all. Crystal dust. Unload. And more LTN trains are getting in. Carbon made it. The other 2 should be shortly behind. Looks like it. Well, everything's chugging along. Looking good. Looks like we're getting nuked on silicon, though, because we just sent that silicon train, so that's going to be running low for a while again. But it's looking pretty good. Before long, this train will be ready to go. Let's look at our unused trains. There it is. We'll say crystal dust load. Wait until full. And crystal dust unload. Empty. There it is. And we have the train that's going to eventually have all of those crystals on it. Let's just grab the whole thing and plop it in there. One potential problem, though, is that we need to get fuel to this train. And I'm not exactly sure where the best place to do that is. It might be better to do it on this side because so far, on this setup, this is going to be the only train that actually needs fuel. So it'd be kind of annoying to send fuel down to that train when we've already got fuel right here. So we can have our train coming up here and then grabbing fuel. But we can set this up properly. Where the 4 individual crystal types will come in there. Crystal, splinter, load. And we'll get the train in there. And give it a healthy amount of rocket booster to tide it over. I think we're just waiting on the rest of these resources to get here. And once they have, we will have enough to start working on these builds. Hey, the crystal dust made it. Awesome, that means we have everything we need. And that's the end of this episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.